President Trump has slapped new tariffs onto imports from Mexico in retaliation of Mexico not helping stem the tide of illegals across our southern border. Yet, if the new trade agreement with Mexico and Canada were now in force, then the president, as well as Congress, would not have that negotiating tool to use. We'll talk about those consequences to American liberty and independence in this episode of Analysis Behind the News. The New American magazine reported online that Trump announced the trade penalties in a tweet late Thursday afternoon, just after he posted video of more than 1,000 illegals surging across the border in the El Paso sector in the wee hours Wednesday. It was the largest group ever apprehended. The New American quoted the president from the White House website. He had written on there, "For decades, the United States has suffered the severe and dangerous consequences of illegal immigration. Sadly, Mexico has allowed this situation to go on for many years, growing only worse with the passage of time. The situation is, from a safety, national security, military, economic, and humanitarian standpoint, a grave disaster. And the American taxpayer," the president said, "bears the extraordinary financial cost imposed by large-scale illegal migration." Now, he said Mexico must step up and help solve this problem. And invoking the Emergency Economic Powers Act, which many would argue, and this is the New American again speaking, is an unconstitutional grant of power from the Congress to the executive, Trump imposed a multi-tiered tariff. Now, recall that last week we went over this transfer of power, how powers have been deliberately transferred from the legislative branch to the executive branch and then delegated to international bureaucracies. Now, if you haven't seen that video from last week, make that the next one to watch. So the president will ratchet up the tariff rate from 5% to 25% if Mexico does not stop the flow of those traveling through its country to get to the U.S. Now, within recent memory, Mexico has only aided the effort to not only get its citizens, but others from outside of its country into the United States. Now, couple that with the previous inaction from Congress and the previous inaction from the executive branch, and you have a recipe for a nonstop flow of illegal aliens. So no matter anyone's opinion on tariffs, the ploy is working, as Mexico representatives are meeting this week with Trump administration officials to hammer out a strategy that will lift the tariffs, possibly even before they actually become implemented. So from a strategy of protecting American liberty and independence, tariffs work. Yet free trade agreements typically bind the hands of the countries involved by taking away much of the power to implement tariffs. Now, the original NAFTA agreement reduced or eliminated many tariffs, which, according to one of North America's largest and preeminent customs brokers and trade services provider, has helped to pave the way for, as they write on their website, for the development of sophisticated supply chains that have allowed American manufacturers, particularly mid-sized firms, to realize cost savings and become more innovative. These supply chains have resulted in increased GDP, higher standards of living, greater investment in research and development, and the rise of the knowledge economy. So, in other words, that's globalist speak, right? In other words, NAFTA helped to regionally integrate the economies of the three countries so that manufacturing facilities were free to be moved out of the U.S. without penalty, and helped to facilitate even more cheap foreign-made junk through existing global supply chains, many of which run right out of China. So if Congress were to implement the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, which is the renegotiated NAFTA, tariffs as a constitutional tool of trade would either be greatly diminished or removed when dealing with Canada and or Mexico. In fact, the USMCA opens up importing labor from Mexico or Canada through Chapter 23 of the agreement. So, Chapter 23, in part, reads, "No party shall adopt or maintain a measure that imposes a limitation on the total number of natural persons that may be employed in a particular financial service sector, or that a financial institution or cross-border service supplier may employ in the form of numerical quotas or the requirement of an economic needs test." President Trump has called NAFTA the worst trade agreement ever negotiated. It seems you should include the USMCA into that one. Now, if you don't think Americans should give up such an effective tool as the tariff, then contact President Trump and Congress today to tell them to stop the USMCA and all deals that give away American sovereignty. Then please get others to do so as well. Contact information is available in the video description or at jbs.org/NAFTA. We need to keep the pressure on them, and your help is very much needed. Then consider joining other patriots at the John Birch Society. Membership opportunities are available at the same page.